Köszöntöm nézőinket, szervusztok! Helsinkiből jelentkezünk, és a következőkben Maria Ohisaloval, a finn kormányzat környezetvédelmi és klímaváltozás ügyi miniszterével fogok majd beszélgetni. Alapvetően az orosz gázfüggőséggel kapcsolatban teszek fel neki kérdéseket, de szóba kerül Finnország rendkívül ambiciózus célkitűzése is, ami alapján 2035-re karbonsemlegessé tennék az ország egészét. Emellett persze szóba fog kerülni a magyar kormánnyal kapcsolatos álláspontjuk, és hát leginkább a NATO csatlakozással kapcsolatos, de legalábbis tartózkodó magyar állásponttal kapcsolatos kritikája, észrevétele is. Úgyhogy mindenképpen iratkozzatok fel a csatornára, ha még nem tettétek volna meg, ha pedig lehetőségetekben áll, akkor kérlek, hogy szálljatok be a finanszírozásunkba a leírásban található lehetőségeken keresztül. Kezdünk. So thanks a lot for accepting the request for this interview. Let's start with Finland's share of gas supply from Russia, which was 75% in 2021, which was the 8th highest in Europe. I think it is a surprising data for my audience. Even in Hungary, it was just 61%. This was cut in 2022 May by Russia. So since that moment, Finland literally does not buy any gas from Russia.
Yes, because of Russia's brutal war on Ukraine, we have stopped literally nearly every cooperation we can, or at least try to stop. And obviously, coming from the Green Party, I'm the party leader for the Green Party since 3.5 years now. I have been for a long time a spokesperson for the green transition. Okay. So that we should make the green transition out of fossil fuels in general towards new, sustainable, more diversified energy supply in general. And of course, what Russia did in Ukraine in the beginning of February, and of course we know what has been happening for a longer time already before that. But that has been the time when we decided to stop nearly everything. And now we actually have this new Baltic connector, new pipeline in the Baltic Sea that comes from Estonia, and we are not anymore dependent on Russian gas. And actually gas has never been that big part of our energy supply in general. So cutting down gas usage has not been that difficult for us. It has mainly been some industries using gas, and we're trying to support them in many ways.
But may I ask you to expand on how you substitute this energy?
We have, for example, got this new LNG vessel, a boat that is actually in one of our harbors that is actually now been used, and this Baltic connector pipeline also gives us the gas that we're needing, but it's roughly 5% out of all the energy supply we have.
Okay, that's interesting because a lot of other countries who are trying to distance themselves from Russia are using also an LNG, but from a green point of view, it constitutes other problems than the dependency on gas. So do you think LNG can be a long-term solution for Finland?
We should get rid of all the fossil fuels in general, but obviously we are now going through the quite fast transition. We as Green Party have been speaking about this for decades.
Yes.
And Finland is not actually that dependent on fossil fuels as some Central European countries, for example. We have been able to do more sustainable energy already here in Finland before the war started. So we're not in that big problems, but still we are going through the transition, and it might mean in a couple of years that we might have to use some fossil fuels, maybe even more. But the biggest thing and the most important thing is to keep in sight all the time the goal to become carbon neutral by 2035. And that would be one of the world's first welfare states to get rid of fossil fuels and become carbon neutral.
Is there any post-Putin scenario when Finland would happy to buy gas again from Russia? And if yes, what would be the requirements towards Russia to be again in a relationship with them?
I think this is a bigger question related to climate change, biodiversity crisis in general. We need to build our society so that we are not dependent on fossil fuels anymore. And this is now the time to especially just accelerate the green transition. And we actually have been on the government level putting nearly 2 billion euros towards this green transition, so that we are supporting, for example, households to get rid of their fossil oil, for example, to switch into other more sustainable sources of energy, ground warm, what would you say, ground heat.
Okay.
For example, that is one of the solutions. Building solar panels, building more wind power. These are the solutions we need, and we also just are beginning to have our Olkiluoto third nuclear power plant is nearly ready to take into use 100%, and that is part of the palette, energy palette. And even me coming from the Green Party, I'm saying that we need nuclear power to, as part of this palette and as part of the green transition in general.
Because this is a better scenario rather than a fossil fuel based
yes,
one.
Yes, and also not only Putin, but also other, may I say, dictators in some countries, they are using fossil fuels to really power their warfare, killing people. We don't want to use fossil fuels, we don't want to be paying for warfare, so we need to get rid of this dependency really fast. And I've been speaking quite a lot about energy independency. So we need to build Finland more energy independent, but at the same time we also need to look at the risks that are looming, for example, regarding to China.
Yeah.
Many companies that now have been drawing themselves from Russia maybe see that now maybe China is the next way to go. And maybe we have some, or we do have a lot of issues regarding human rights, regarding the way power is centered in some hands in China. So we need to be careful also regarding how we see our technology independency here in Finland, but also in Europe in general. And in the European Union level, we have been speaking about this, what's the word now, strategic autonomy in general, strategic autonomy regarding, for example, technology, so that it would not only be China that is producing all of the electronical supply for us, but we would also do our part here in Europe. And these are big questions and dependencies that we need to get rid of.
Okay, can you say with confidence on the behalf of your government that your government has no intention in the near future to be in a commercial relationship with Russia to buy gas from them?
Obviously, I'm not the minister responsible for energy questions, but as I look at the bigger picture, our government's goal is to get rid of fossil fuels and also Russian fossil fuels. We have set the goal to 2035. We have a new climate act telling us that, and that means that not just this government, but also the next ones coming are bound to this goal. And I think I can say, at least personally and from my party's point of view, that we should not be dependent on Russian fossil fuels anymore.
What steps should be taken to achieve this goal?
We're actually doing quite a lot in many different sectors. It's not only just the government, us politicians deciding on these issues. We have set the goals, and now our target is to, and our work is to get the whole society along, so that we are, for example, okay, let's see, we have the Climate Act saying let's become carbon neutral by 2035, let's cut down the emissions, but at the same time we need to lift up the carbon sinks, and that is in the context of Finland, meaning mainly forestry and forest areas, land use sector, and we have set also goals on that sector. But carbon sinks are really important for us in order to get into the 35 goal. And we right now have some difficulties in having our carbon sinks as strong as they have been. This comes mainly from the fact that we are cutting down quite a lot of forests right now, especially in the middle of energy crisis. And this is something that I personally am all the time talking about the longer term vision, and not just that now we're in the middle of the energy crisis, we should not lose the bigger targets. But for example, we have done quite big programs with largest sectors in the society. Let's say energy sector, for example, technology sector. Big companies are already along. They want to cut down their emissions. They have done their own plans to become carbon neutral. And at the same time now they're actually also bringing plans on the table that are saying that they also want to tackle the biodiversity crisis, because we know that we are losing species, and this is another crisis. We have climate crisis and we have biodiversity crisis, and we need to tackle both. And I think it's really a good thing that many sectors have now come along. We have also, as I mentioned, we have put nearly 2 billion euros to this green transition, meaning that, for example, we are building more charging stations for electric cars. We are giving subsidies for households and companies in order for them to change their heating systems towards more sustainable ones. We are actually in the beginning of next year, 2023, we're starting a new loan program where small, medium-sized companies, households could, for example, get a loan in order to change that heating system. Because now the system can be so that, or the situation can be so that if you live, let's say, far away from bigger cities, maybe the banks are not that willing to give you loans in order to make some energy, let's say, to build your own household more energy efficient, for example. So this is a new instrument taking into action next year. And so not just the legal objectives and goals, but also the euros are pushing towards that green transition, and also the systematical planning in all the sectors we have in the society.
That's great, and I think it's a very inspiring and ambitious plan. But isn't the final date too late? Because, you know, there is a very wide consensus among scientists that even if we don't reduce our CO2 consumption till the end of the decade, then this entire cause will be lost for humanity. So what would be your response on this kind of a criticism?
Many people tell me that Finland doesn't play any role as a small country. What does it matter that a small country with 5.5 million people, what we do? But I actually think that showing an example, telling the story, what we're doing, what we're planning, is really important also in the global scale. Now we're heading towards the climate negotiations, COP27, and that there one of the biggest questions is, can we still stick to that 1.5 targets? And we will definitely want to keep that target alive, not just Finland but also the European Union. And while Finland held the EU presidency 2019, while this government started, that was actually the first half a year. We just started as a government, and then we were also doing the EU presidency, but we were pushing for an EU-wide carbon neutrality goal, and we got it. And now we have been doing this Fit for 55 package, which goes to many different sectors and is a really important legal tool for our or a legislative tool for our countries, so that we can say that European Union is actually moving towards the goal.
Is it really? So I think you are well aware of the fact that there is a wide range frustration even among the youngest ones. So I think they can say with confidence that even Finland, who, you know, posing a very inspiring role in this battle, but you are too late. What would be your response to these young people?
I totally understand, and I share the frustration of these youngsters. And I have been a young person myself who became an active participator in politics. I decided that I want to influence via politics. And I already now know I've been a member of Green Party since, let's say, 15 years. And I already now know that we can make changes, but sometimes changes take time and they take a lot of energy. You have to push, and push. It doesn't matter if you wrote it down in the governmental program, you still need to fight for the goal for the next 4 years again and again. And sometimes, well, I think we need everybody along. We need activists who are putting the goals here. And then if we have more and more people putting the goals here, maybe politicians and politics could also move further and further all the time.
So you are welcoming this kind of an activism?
I'm not saying that I'm welcoming all the measures they are using. They choose them by themselves and they bear the responsibility of those. I personally wanted to choose political party, and this form of democracy where I know that, okay, via a political party, especially while sitting in a government, we have the legislative tools, we have the euros, and these are the biggest ways to move the boat to a right direction. The change takes time, but I guess that we're more and more hearing the news from all around the world, what climate change does around the world, what scientists are telling us. And I'm personally also have done a PhD, as my previous job was that, and I'm a scientist from the background, so I want to listen to their message. And this is why I think it's really important that our Climate Act now is set according to climate panel's advice. So climate panel here is an expert panel that is full of professors, researchers, and this is according to science. We are getting towards climate neutrality, carbon neutrality by 35.
So we are sitting in the lobby of the ministry responsible for environment and climate change.
Yes.
It's easier to say in English than in Hungarian. But so it's a very transparent building, and you are working here as
Secretary General for Climate Change Panel and as a senior specialist.
Okay, so what do you do on the daily basis? What is your responsibilities?
I'm working with the climate law reform, with the midterm climate change action plan, and I have a lot of things related to research projects to be ensured that we have enough scientific information for decision making. And then I have a lot of different kind of meetings with stakeholders, for instance. And then I work also with different financial instruments to support the green transition.
Okay, let's talk about these, because as you mentioned and also your minister mentioned, transparency is very important to you in order to move forward in the green transition.
Yes.
So what kind of practices can you recall in order to involve, I don't know, scientists, civil sphere and so on?
We have actually several mechanisms. Some of them are based in the climate law and some are additional ones. And I can start with the scientists. The Climate Act actually requires that we have to have this climate change panel, and it includes 15 researchers from different fields, and they are independent from the government, but they are obliged to give a scientific advice for the government on climate issues, both the mitigation and the adaptation issues. They are top scientists of the country, and their term is 4 years. And during that time, they have different research projects where they analyze what information is needed for government decision making. And they have, for instance, make their recommendations in relation to reform of the Climate Act and the midterm climate change plan. But they have also given around 100 statements for different actors of government and parliament during this 3.5 years. So they are very actively contributing the scientific basis. We have had also during this governmental term so-called climate policy roundtable. It's led by the Prime Minister. It includes...
So she is involved in the process?
Yes.
So she's not delegating to your minister?
She's the chair the first chair of the Climate Policy Roundtable. And it includes 20 stakeholders.
Is that a PR decision, or is she really involved in the process?
No, she is.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can say it with confidence.
Well, she's not probably attending all the meetings.
Yeah.
But formally, she is the chair. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that shows that when the Prime Minister is leading this roundtable that includes youngsters, indigenous people, people from the labour market, municipalities, NGOs, representatives of industries and so on, that she wants to have this direct dialogue.
And it's not a PR move, so it's not just for the media, it's not just for...
No, it's not, because basically with the meetings, they are very strict that you have to be able to talk very freely. So they use even this Chatham House principles that you can really tell what you think.
Okay, so it's behind closed doors.
They are doing also some open speeches, what they've been doing and giving statements and so on. But still, they want to have this very trustful discussion so that they don't have to be afraid what they will say.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could choose myself, if I would lead this country by myself with my party, which is something I don't hope for. I hope for an open democracy where we have many parties. But we as a Green Party, of course, we would do the change faster. Mm-hmm. We could say that maybe carbon neutrality could be in 2030. Or
would that be a feasible scenario?
That's a good question. Would we have all the tools and measures on our hands? Just to make it short, from the Green Party perspective, we should do more and we should do faster. Then I sit in the government with 4 other parties. And I think now in the government we have the parties that are willing to do maybe the most ambitious climate policies. I'm not sure that from the opposition side right now we could find any other parties that would do it faster. So we have to live in these in this box that we are right now. And
you were referring to the realities of the coalition, and Finance Minister is Annika Saarikko, who happens to be the leader of the Finnish Center party. Do you have heated conversations with her? Because you also press the issue that yes, climate change is not just about changing policies. It also requires spending public funds in order to go forward with this transition, green transition.
Yeah, and one of my party's biggest messages has all the time been that when we do the green transition, we need to make it just and fair. Yeah. So to make a fair transition, just transition, we need to spend money in order to support people who are losing, for example, their jobs. We have a quite large peat industry here in Finland, and that is one of the energy sources that is causing quite a lot of emissions, and we should get rid of that. And at the same time, we should safeguard these people's livelihoods in the future. So you asked if I had heated discussions with Annika Saarikko, and yes, we have had that. And we come from very different kinds of parties. Our goals are very different, but still we have been able to sit in this government together. We have been able to follow our government program or the platform, and we have been, for example, getting the new climate law. And I think sometimes you might need to fight, and quite often you need to fight, but in the end you have the goal here, and if we get there, it doesn't really matter what happens in the way.
Okay, and my last question, I know it's not your field, but you were an interior minister before. So maybe you have a comment on this issue as well. So you are waiting to get accepted by NATO, and Hungary and Turkey is still blocking this kind of an accession. So do you have any comment on this, and do you have positive feelings that the Hungarian parliament will pass a yes on your accession?
I know that we have had very good cooperation, especially our Minister for Foreign Affairs and your minister, and I have heard a positive view on the accession process, and I want to trust Hungarian.
So you're still positive?
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.